Hi there. Just a quick programming note. We recorded this on Thursday evening, and things may have changed since then. To get the latest information on the election, go to KUOW.org. Hey, it's Patricia Murphy. It's Friday, Casual Friday, and this is Seattle Now. This week, the only thing anyone paid attention to was the election. Here in Washington, we re-elected our governor, but the chatter is he might be out of here for a cabinet position if our electoral votes reflect the next president. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Seattle Times food writer Vinh is here, and so is KUOW reporter Casey Martin. In a minute, we'll break down the week. But first, let's get you caught up. There's been an internal shakeup at the Washington Supreme Court. Justice Stephen Gonzalez has been elected to replace Justice Deborah Stevens as Chief Justice. The vote comes just a year after Stevens was unanimously elected to that role by her fellow justices. It was temporary, but she had hoped to continue. Instead, a majority of the justices chose Gonzalez to take the Chief Justice position. His term lasts 4 years. In other news from the High Court, dairies will be required to pay workers overtime under a new ruling. A decades-old state law has exempted farm workers from classes of workers who are entitled to overtime. But in a divided ruling this week, the court found that unconstitutional as it applied to the dairy industry. The court's reasoning is expected to apply to other farm workers as well. And Husky fans will have to wait another week to see the first game of the season. Tomorrow's game against the University of California, Berkeley was canceled thanks to a positive test on the Cal roster. The game was declared a no contest, so it won't count as a win or a loss for either team. The Huskies' first game will now be November 14th against Oregon State. This week, my Fitbit reminded me every day how little I've been sleeping. It also told me when I was sleeping, it was bad sleep. This is what democracy looks like in America 2020. Seattle Times food writer Vinh is here. Are you sleeping this week?
Only with the help of edibles, I am.
Okay, you had to bring in the assist. KUOW reporter Casey Martin is here too. Casey, you've been out reporting this week. How many hours are you getting?
You know, I slip into some naps here and there. You got to time them out right. You got to strategize your sleep this week. But, I've gotten plenty of sleep. I'm feeling good.
Okay. That's true. You have to grab your hours where you can during breaking news situations. Smart, Casey. Mm-hmm. Election day was technically only 24 hours, you two, but it definitely felt like an eternity. And here we are days later, votes still being counted. Trump is hoping the courts will help him in some key states. But at this moment, Thursday, midday, Biden has the edge. The nation is in the middle of a crash course on election week, and we've had a hangover since Wednesday morning. We knew it was going to play out this way, but man, everything this week has just been an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, and you know what? Each candidate has got 69 million votes at least.
Amazing.
So you're going to have 69 million people who are going to be angry with the results either way. And we're going to resolve nothing. We're just in for a lot of rallies and protests and chants of not my president. So it's going to be a tough year.
Casey, what about you? Are you in adrenaline overdrive this week or what?
It feels like, the whole country's been up, we're in the middle of catching a flight and you're just kind of waiting at the airport and you don't want to leave the airport because you know that you have to catch the flight. And we're just kind of stuck in this limbo and it's just, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotion. And Tom's right. It still feels like none of this emotion's going to go away. There's so many supporters that have so much invested in this election. So it's been wild. I think it's good to see a lot of people. I think the vast majority of people are just, buckling down. They trust the process, and we're just trying to get through this. An election that will be, decided hopefully this week, and people at least accept those outcomes.
I know. I feel like my adrenaline and my anxiety has just been off the charts this week. I've been stress eating. You stress eating?
Oh, gosh. Can I tell you, I think I've gained 5 pounds in just the last 3 days. And if you're going to stress eat, this is the best time to do it in terms of takeouts, because you should see some of the deals that chefs are putting together. I mean, at Butcher's Table, they have a mac and cheeseburger, which is exactly like what it sounds. It's like a beef patty topped with Beecher's mac and cheese. And it is evil. just pure evil.
Casey, what is your go-to stress snack?
Well, I mean, this week, just followed Halloween, and of course I had 0 trick-or-treaters and $50 worth of really cheap, horrible candy. And, it's been Snickers for breakfast, Twix for lunch, and then maybe some Skittles for dinner. And, I'm trying to keep those balanced, but it's tough.
Yeah. Tuesday night was really hard for Democrats when things looked so promising for Trump in the beginning there. It seemed like 2016 was going to play out again, and then things got really complicated. Here's the thing that I noticed. Casey, the nation is not comfortable waiting. And I feel like here in Washington, we're pretty darn good at counting ballots. Like, things were fairly smooth and we've been conditioned for the pacing, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Washington State has been voting, pretty much all mail for years, close to a decade in every county. And, we are very used to this. We're used to kind of, it's not going to be results all on election night. It takes a few days, even a few weeks for all of those ballots to come in. And, there was a lot of political reporters, talking about this before election night, saying, to the rest of the country, like, oh, we know what we're doing. We know how to do this.
Yeah.
Washington, we've been doing this for years and we're very, very used to it. And it has been kind of funny as the rest of the country, there is a lot of debate on, whether or not we should keep counting these ballots and how long is it really going to take. And for us, we, like you said, for every election, we've been doing this for years. The thing that has changed, and it's been funny that even very, very patient Washingtonians is waiting for the presidential election.
Yeah.
We waited for, other races, local races and ballot measures for a few days and weeks, for that, to finally, come to a conclusion. But, last few presidential elections have been the night of or early Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
And so even some very patient people around here are like, okay, I'd like to figure out what's going on in Nevada. How's Arizona doing?
I know. I feel like I have been just sitting here like, come on, you guys, we can do this. We can do this.
Yeah.
And Casey, there was so much concern before the election about violence on election night. Storefronts all over the country, including here, boarding up in anticipation of what was to come. Here in the city, of course, we have had ongoing protests since George Floyd. And there were protests, there were demonstrations on election night, but they were very peaceful. You were out there. What were you hearing? What was the scene on election night?
Yeah, by and large, it was very peaceful, and this has been, for the majority of these protests, for majority of people who show up, it's to, call for racial equity. It's to get these messages out. It's not necessarily to, break windows or to, get into scuffles with police. They're there to occupy space in the street, have their voices heard, get these messages out. And yeah, the night of, there wasn't, we still don't have a final election result yet. But, last couple of nights, they have been very, very peaceful. I went out last night. It was a much larger gathering of a few hundred people. This was for a count every ballot, protect every person rally that we've seen in large cities. New York had one. LA had these large rallies. And last night was very, very peaceful. Hundreds of people marched through South Lake Union. There weren't even cops trailing this group this time. So yeah, we haven't seen a lot of the feared violence. Again, election isn't over quite yet. But, when you talk to anybody who goes to these, they're not there to, break windows or to, get into these fights.
Yeah.
They're really there to, talk about Black Lives Matter, to talk about how much work they want to do. But yeah, they've been very peaceful.
It doesn't sound like we're living up to our anarchist jurisdiction label. I think
not quite, which is kind of a bummer. It's so edgy and cool, and we're actually pretty docile.
Right. And we were voting on a lot of important issues this time around. Jay Inslee won a rare third term. Denny Heck won lieutenant governor's race. He's taken a powder on the Congress, but he's going to come back here and be a lieutenant governor. Governor Inslee said his victory gives him a mandate to continue to battle COVID-19, which is good because we are living in the third wave of this thing.
Yeah, and the night he was elected also happens to be the day when Washington recorded a record high for coronavirus cases.
Yeah.
And guess what, Trish? Winter is coming.
Yeah.
And those numbers are going to be easily 2,000 a day. So it's going to get worse. I hope Inslee sticks around and doesn't take a cabinet position because it's going to be hell next year.
Yeah. Casey, Lauren Culp hasn't conceded yet. And this week he went on Facebook Live to tell people he was defunded out of his job as the police chief of Republic. He said he's not going quietly. You think we'll hear more from Culp?
He was just on the Dory Monson show, and Dory Monson, was laying out the numbers to him and says, I really don't see a path to victory for you. And, he said there's always a chance. There's still always a chance. When you talk to conservatives or you talk to Republican voters in Washington State, at least in my experience, they weren't so excited or so eager to talk about Trump. But boy, they were really excited to talk about Lauren Culp. They were very fired up. And so there is, I think Lauren Culp is kind of holding on still because there was a lot of momentum and excitement for getting a Republican governor in a widely Democratic state.
No, I was going to say, we talked so much about the governor's race, but to me, the lieutenant governor's race is pretty much like the governor's race in the sense that I think Heck is going to be the next governor. And I hate that, people are just like taking Inslee for his word when he says, you know what, I'm not going to take a cabinet post if Biden offered it to me. But what did you expect Inslee to say in the campaign trail? Like, hey, vote for me for governor, but if I get a cabinet position, see ya. Of course he's not going to say that.
The lure of the other DC might be calling. We'll see. We will see how that plays out. In controlled substance news, Oregon has become the first state to legalize psychedelic mushrooms for medicinal use. Ton, you were on the show not too long ago and said it was because Oregon was way cooler than us. I guess this proves it.
Right? And you know what? Not only that, they have decriminalized the possession of cocaine or heroin.
Small amounts,
doses,
yep.
Of course, small doses. But they've decriminalized that. And I think that's going to be the next new movement that we see across the country. And another thing that happened related to that, Trish, is states that legalize marijuana this time around, New Jersey, Arizona, Montana, South Dakota. And they're joining a dozen other states that have already done so.
The nation is about to get a little more chill.
There you go.
Well, before we go beyond hot takes now, I know there's a lot we need to sift through before we put the big narrative on this election. But I'm curious, Ton, what are you taking away from this year's election so far?
That this is not a country that I even recognize anymore. I can't believe how divided we are as a nation. And regardless of whoever is president, all these rallies and protests are going to continue. Coronavirus cases are going to go up. And I don't see a happy ending in this. And that makes me very sad.
Yeah, we have revealed a greater truth about our country in this election that I think maybe a lot of people weren't willing to see before. Casey, what's your non-hot take on where we're at right now in this election?
We talked earlier about the rest of the country going through these growing pains of having to wait for, these election results. And I hope that just becomes as normalized as it is here in Washington.
We're here, America. Let us show you how to vote by mail.
Do it the Washington day. We know what we're doing. Come on.
That's our show. Thanks again to my guests, Casey Martin. He's a reporter here at KUOW. And Ton Vinh. He's a food writer for the Seattle Times. Thanks, you two.
Thanks, Trish.
Hey, thanks, Murph, so much.
Have a great weekend. Seattle Now is produced by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez, Clare McGrane, Matt Martin, Sophie Reed, and Jason Pagano. Matt Jorgensen does our music. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you Monday.
Now you can hear the KUOW news stories you want.
COVID-19 vaccine.
Chaotic protests against
whenever you want.
Black tech workers specific.
With the KUOW Newsroom podcast.
Pacific Northwest Ballet dancers.
Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos.
Elections are under the microscope.
Pick, skip, or save the stories you care about on demand.
Students online.
With the KUOW Newsroom podcast.
Seattle restaurants are required to
stay up to date with easy access to trusted in-depth reporting from our award-winning journalist.
Liz Jones, KUOW.
I'm Austin Jenkins.
Ruby DeLuna, KUOW News.
Joshua McNichols, KUOW.
Visit KUOW.org or search KUOW Newsroom on your podcasting app.